All right, anybody listening to the podcast, go back and look at this final play of this Vikings-Lions game. Send us a comment. Leave us a comment on Facebook, comment on Podbean, whatever you're listening to this podcast on. Tell us what you think about that last play. We'll see.
Welcome to Beyond Sports with Paul and Jeremy. I'm Paul.
I'm Jeremy.
We look at sports from all angles.
What's really going on?
Beyond Sports.
All right, so welcome to Beyond Sports with Paul and Jeremy. This is our live show for Week 13 of the NFL season. Jeremy, we were starting the show a little bit later than we typically do, right? So we typically do them before, but we already made our picks and everything like that. But it's actually kind of interesting. I'm actually excited to actually talk about some of the games that we picked, maybe even why we picked some of those games and what actually took place, right? So sorry about that. Have a little bit of a cold. So Jeremy, first of all, before we even talk about any other games, the Lions got their first win. How does that make you feel? Did you see this coming? Did you not see this coming? What are your thoughts on this Lions victory?
No one can ever see a Lions win coming. We know this. So no, I didn't see it coming. I heard a lot of people saying this is the week that they could win. Like they say that every week. So I don't feel like anybody actually predicted it. But it's good to see that they got a win. Like we said, they played hard. They've done everything they can to win week by week, and they finally got one. So this will not be an undefeated, or this will not be a winless season. This will not be a season marked by just ties and losses. They finally got a win. Now they can lose the rest of them with dignity. So I'm happy for them.
Hey, they can lose the rest with dignity. It's crazy because I feel like the Vikings, now I know why they lose close games. Now I know why they're 20 points from an undefeated season. It's because they don't understand. They don't understand the basics, man. Like it's so crazy. It's so crazy how bad their defense was. Like that last drive was just ridiculous. Like I had no clue what they were doing. I'm looking at this game like I'm getting mad like they're the Colts. I'm like, what is going on here? Like they didn't know how to play prevent defense. They didn't know where the end zone was. Like who plays 8 yards deep in the end zone when they just need to get less than a yard into the end zone? Like it was so weird to me. And I'm looking at this in real time. Like I think they're going to score. Why are they playing? Oh, did he catch that? I was so surprised that that's what the Vikings allowed to happen, especially when you're talking about, Mike Zimmer, right? And the defensive minded coach or whatever. Like what type of defense was that? Like I'm so confused with what the Vikings are doing and how they got that game plan together. What were your thoughts, especially on that last drive, by the way? Like what did you think about that? Did you think that they had a chance to win with 2 minutes left after the Vikings had just went and got a touchdown? And they only had one timeout. You take over from here. You take over.
No, I didn't see it. So all I saw was the game cast, the little scores on there. And what it looked like was the Lions had a pretty good lead, and then the Vikings were just walking them down little by little. So at the point where the Vikings scored toward the end of the game, there wasn't that much time left. I figured, hey, that's probably it. The Vikings are destined to win this game. They got the late touchdown. They should be good. But then as I saw, they were, the Lions kept pushing the ball downfield more and more. They were able to get close to the goal line, and then then it happened. So I was actually hoping that they would win. I just didn't see that coming because everything we've seen all year long would tell us that the Lions would lose that game in heart-wrenching fashion. But they got to win. Again, like I said, everybody can be proud of them now. They can lose every single game from here on out, and nobody will say anything. Dan Campbell keeps his job, and he's got, some momentum going into next season. He got one win. Maybe next year we'll do two because I'm not going to count on him to get another one this year.
Yeah, maybe two. Yeah, that was probably one of the most ridiculous endings I've seen. I just had no clue. Like it looked like a high school football team trying to figure out what to do. Like all the basics were just gone. Like they need to be handheld. Like in Pee Wee football, they like you stay right here, right? Like let's put this dude over here. Like let's put this guy over here. Don't move. If somebody comes here, then you try to bat at the ball. Like that's what they needed because it was so bad. Like I've never seen something so bad as that drive that they allowed the Lions to have. So what I'll say with that game is shout out to the Lions. I was telling Jeremy earlier, I initially had the Lions or thought about picking the Lions, and I was like, nah, I can't go against the Vikings after I've been talking about them all season long. I've been talking about how they've been only 18 points away from a perfect season, right? But now they're 20 points away from a perfect season because they are just ridiculous. They're just bad. They're not a playoff team. Like I'll say this, like if they get into the playoffs, like they're gonna mess up just because they don't know how to be efficient. So
can we agree that they are the best bad team?
No, they're not the best bad team. The Colts are the best bad team. That's what's happening.
The worst good team.
No, they're the best bad team. Like that's another thing that I want to talk about. Like I'm done with these teams that are in between, right? Like you're a team, you showcase what you are every single week, every single play. The coach is a part of the team, the offensive coordinators. If you're calling bad plays and not allowing your stars to do what they can do well, then that makes you a kind of like a bad team. You know, like I always said that they're a really good team. They just need to get it together, but maybe they're just a bad team because they don't understand where their strengths are. And that goes from the head to the bottom. So really good win today by the Colts, by the way, Jeremy. So what did you think about that game? I know we both, I assumed you picked the Colts for that game. So what did you think about that game? They won against Houston. I think it was 31-0. Jonathan Taylor finally got his carries. I think he had like 32, something like that, 140 something yards and like 2 touchdowns. Really good performance from him. So yeah. So what do you think about that game?
I think it's one of those palate cleansers. So it's just nice to have a nice little palate cleanser. It's nice to have Houston on your schedule, Jacksonville on your schedule, some team where you can look and say, you know what, it's not an off week, but we don't have to work that hard to get a win.
Yeah.
And if you lose, you should be really upset and you should realize that your team is not as good as you thought it was. So I think Indy did what it had to do. Titans are off this week, are they?
I think so, yeah.
So, they artificially make up a little ground on the Titans. They get a little bit farther ahead in the playoff hunt. We'll see how it goes with New England and Buffalo because the loser of that game, if Buffalo loses that game, then that really does help Indy out a lot. So it's a good win because they needed to. It wasn't necessarily, a win against a good team, but they needed a win. They got it in impressive fashion. So I don't know. I do think that they are the worst good team, and that's all. So I think that they could make the playoffs if they stick to a good strategy. If they keep running the ball like they should, then I think that they can make the playoffs and be one of the best teams in the league. But I don't think necessarily that they're playing up to their potential. And, we were talking about this offline, and I think it's worth noting. I watched the first episode, just the part of the first episode of the Colts in-season Hard Knocks, and I did not realize how much Frank Reich loves Carson Wentz. He loves that guy. And then you sent me some articles, and it was like, find someone who loves you like Frank Reich loves Carson Wentz. And that's the dream, right? That's all we want. He is so loyal to him. It makes sense. Like, he's not going to bench him. They're not looking to get the draft picks. They're looking to play Carson Wentz because Frank Reich loves that man in a way that cannot be explained, in a way that is true love, in a way that is sacrificial. All that Bible verse about what love is, that's what they have, right? That's what it is. So I think that explains a lot of the loyalty to Carson Wentz, and I'm glad I saw that because I never knew it, and it explains a lot.
Yeah, it explains a lot. I didn't even see it, and I don't even have to because I already knew about this crazy, ridiculous love, and I'm tired of I'm tired of it showing his face in the Colts on the Colts team. Like it's kind of ridiculous, if you're a coach and you love a player that much where you love them so much that you can't correct them for their mistakes, then that's an issue, right? Like you don't need that type of love. You don't need the love. Like that's what you have for, I'd say like a bad kid, like that bad kid that always just talks crap to his parents, like that's what Frank Reich and Carson Wentz relationship is. He can do whatever he wants to, and he never has to take accountability for it. There's only a couple of quarterbacks in this league that I've actually seen that when they win, they get a ton of credit. When they lose, they don't take any credit, right? Like Carson Wentz, Matt Stafford was that same type of case. But say, for example, Patrick Mahomes, right, or Lamar Jackson, when these guys lose games, you're like, what's going on with Lamar Jackson? Like, he should have did better. He should have performed well. Like, you never hear that about Carson Wentz. And I think that that's one of the issues is that if he's not aware of how he's hurting his team, and if the coach is behind him 100% while he's hurting his team, then nothing will ever get fixed. And if you think about Carson Wentz, like I said, he likes to play that hero ball. And when you're talking about hero ball, that just means that when the playoffs come, if they make the playoffs, that's when he's really going to showcase what he has. That's when he's going to really be that hero. What is that song like? I can be your hero, baby, or something like that. No, you can't, Carson Wentz.
Hero, baby.
You cannot be.
Hopefully that don't get us taken off Spotify.
Hey, you cannot be. So I think that the Colts, they have, like I said, I don't want to say it's really a bad team, but they have a lot of bad characteristic traits that they need to figure out. And if they don't get those fixed, then they're just going to be mediocre. Like, they cannot advance past their own limitations. And that's the biggest thing for the Colts right now, is that we see what happens. You give Jonathan Taylor the ball, you win big. You let Carson Wentz pass all day, you lose games you should have won. And it's happened all season long. So when I see this win against Houston, great. I'm glad that we put up 31-0. What does it mean to me? It means nothing if we haven't figured out our issues. Consistency is key. And if we don't have consistency, then what's the point, right? Like, the point's not to make the playoffs. The point's to win the NFL championship or the Super Bowl. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with them. But shout out to the Colts for getting that win and for establishing themselves. I think, let me see, they're a game behind Buffalo right now. And I think so let's look at the conference, right? So right now, the Colts are.
What we're seeing is
7-6.
New England game. Yeah, this New England game is really important. So New England is trying to get the number 1 seed anyway, which they can, depending on how things shake out. And after that, then Buffalo, if they lose, they drop down, and then all of a sudden, maybe they're not in the playoff hunt right now.
Yeah. So the interesting thing about the AFC right now, we have a bunch of teams that have 6 wins, between 6 and 8 wins. So I'm just going to read them off, and I'll add Pittsburgh, even though they have that tie or whatever. So you have Miami at 6-7. Shout out to Miami. We'll talk about them later. So Miami's at 6-7. Pittsburgh is at 5-1. Cleveland's at 6-6. Indy's at 7-6. Then we have Denver at 6-5. Raiders at 6-5. Cincy at 7-5. Chargers at 7-5. Buffalo at 7-4. KC at 7-4. Tennessee and New England are both 8-4, and Baltimore is at the top at 8-3. So it's a very close race. Anybody can almost have the top seed. Like, everybody still has a chance to pretty much get the top seed in the NFL for the AFC this year. So, man, it's turning out to be a crazy season, right? What season is it, Jeremy, by the way?
This is the biggest season ever.
Bet. That's what I'm talking about.
Unfortunately, the playoffs are the same as last year, so it's tied for the biggest playoffs ever. Unfortunately.
Yeah. We'll do it, right? 14 teams. Sounds good. So, but yeah, so we talked about the Colts. We talked about them. Now let's shoot down to this. I'm down to talk about this Miami game, right? So Miami hosted the Giants, and me, the same type of thing was considering Miami as well, but I couldn't go against the Giants because I've been talking about them all year. Like, it's time for them to break free. But did they break free, Jeremy?
No, not that I saw. No, I did not see them break free.
No, they did not. They did not break free. If anything, they broke broke themselves. Like, they're still not doing what they need to be doing. So I don't know what's going on with the Giants. They just Jeremy, from an outsider perspective that doesn't think the Giants are that good of a team. Is it Daniel Jones? Is it Barkley? Is it the defense? Is it the coordinator? Who is it? What is going on with the New York Giants? Why can they not consistently put together wins?
When I've seen the Giants play, I can't fault the defense. I've never felt like their defense was that bad, but I felt like their offensive execution wasn't good. I thought there were too many turnovers. As many playmakers as they have on offense, they're just not clicking. There's something that's just not working out. I do think Daniel Jones is a big part of the problem because he cannot stop turning the ball over at bad times. And I do think, like you said about Saquon Barkley, he's not that between the tackles runner, and he's been injured a lot. So I think that takes away from his explosiveness. When I saw him play last, he looked like he had nothing. Like he just couldn't break off anything big. He couldn't find holes. It didn't look good at all when I saw him. So I think I agree with you now in terms of maybe the injuries have already limited his career. And then Devontae Booker, when I see him play, it's the same thing. Like neither one of them seem very explosive, but Booker seems a little bit more workmanlike. Like he's able to get consistent yards. But the offense just isn't explosive enough. Their biggest plays are Daniel Jones runs, And when your quarterback, when his best weapon is a run, he's basically Taysom Hill at that point. So you're not getting it done through the air. You're not getting it really done with your running backs. I just think offensively, not there. I don't think it's Jason Garrett's fault. I think there's just something not quite right. And, Jason Garrett had to bear the brunt of it. But I'm sure there's going to be bigger changes in the offseason anyway.
Yeah, and today I just realized Daniel Jones didn't even play, right? It was Mike Glennon today. So 23 for 44, 187 and 1 interception. Saquon Barkley, 11 rushes for 55 yards with a long of 23. And like I said, that's Saquon's thing. He can get those big plays every now and then, but he's not that consistent runner, right? With that 23-yard run, now he's averaging 5 yards per carry. You take that off, what's that? 33, 10 carries for 33. So he's averaging 3.3 yards per carry. That's not what you need out of a running back down in for every down, So I think that's one of the issues with the Giants is that they just don't have what they anticipate what they think that they have, right? Like you talk about Mike Glennon, like what about their wide receivers? They drafted Evan Ingram. Evan Ingram was a tight end, was supposed to be that wide receiver catching type of tight end, but he has never really grown into that, right? They have Galladay there, so it's like they have Darius Slayton. He did really, really good at some points, but he's not consistent. You have John Ross, who was drafted by the Bengals, right? And he was a burner that never really progressed to be a really good wide receiver. So they're a very dysfunctional team from the perspective of putting together a team. And I think that's one of the things that I'm starting to see with the NFL. They're putting players in positions, but they don't really have teams. They have a lot of guys that are individually maybe good, but they're not consistent. So there is no flow. And when you look at some of these top teams in the NFL, right, there's that consistency. There's that flow. Like, what's happening. Like you can see how guys are playing off of each other. And for the Giants, I just don't know if I continue to see that. On the other hand, shout out to the Dolphins, right? So I think I heard earlier that the Dolphins were the only team to start 1-7 and then get to 6-7 in the NFL history or something like that. So shout out to the Dolphins. What do you take from that, Jeremy? What do you think about the Dolphins and their renewed energy in getting all of these wins?
The Dolphins started off the season with high expectations. Everybody hoped that they were going to duplicate that 10-win season. And then when things didn't really start working well, people jumped ship. And so maybe the expectations kind of helped, maybe losing those expectations helped. Maybe the fact that, hey, Tua has a rhythm now. We don't expect Tua to be the biggest arm quarterback. We don't expect him to be the most athletic, but he's great at anticipating. He's got good touch. And I think, having a rhythm, I'm sure helped a lot. And let's look at their schedule because, maybe their schedule is really kind too. Also, shout out to my brother because he shared the show. He's a big Dolphins fan, so he's going to be happy that the Dolphins are actually doing well. So thanks, Dave.
Thanks, David.
So let's see what their schedule. Because when they lost all those games, they lost to the Bills, Raiders, Colts, Buccaneers. So those were good teams. Then they lost to the Jaguars and Falcons, but then they lost to the Bills again. And they've recently beaten the Texans, Ravens, Jets, Panthers, and Giants. So I think out of those, there was one good win. Really, their last couple games, not to take anything away from them because they're doing what they got to do. I think the Ravens win was really good. Texans not so great. Jets aren't so great. Panthers, we don't know what to make of them. And the Giants, we just talked about what their problems are. So they're playing the Jets next week. No, sorry, they're playing the Jets in 2 weeks. They have a bye next week. So being as that, they can get to 500. They definitely can get to 500 playing these Jets because they're playing good football. They get a bye week, so they're going to be a little bit more energized, recharged. And then we'll see because their home stretch is Saints, Titans, and Patriots, which are going to be tough games. So they come 7-7, and then they have, 3 more games that are tough. So we'll see how they do at the end. I'm looking forward to that because I think Miami is really good at closing seasons. They've done that in the past where they've had, maybe needed to win to make the playoffs, and they've been able to do it. So their closers, that game versus the Patriots at the end, the Patriots are going to be playing for a lot because right now it seems that the Patriots are probably going to be at the top of the AFC. So that's going to be interesting to see how that season turns out. But I'm expecting them to win in 2 weeks to get to 500. And then after that, hey, it's a free-for-all. We'll see what happens.
I think that's a very interesting point. A lot of times we can see some of the top teams, they kind of rest their players near the end of the season, but I feel like this one is going to be very aggressive at the end, right? Like teams are going to be playing because they need to get those buys, right? They need to get those wins. And because it's so close, I could see a lot of teams really trying to win those last games. One thing that you mentioned was Tua, and how he's maybe getting in a rhythm, getting a little bit better, right? So he's had his injury issues. Jacoby Brissett has stepped in at different times, which has been kind of a hit or miss, but they've still got some of those wins in. One of the biggest things that I had as an issue with the Dolphins was their passing, right? They pass so much compared to their runs. In this game, they at least got Myles Gaskin's 15 carries. So 25 rushing attempts. There are some games where it was lower than that. They still passed the ball 41 times, which is a ton, and Tua, he didn't really run that much. He only had 2 carries for 1 yard. So he's definitely trying to do it out of the backfield. And when you have guys like the wide receivers that they have, when you're talking about Jalen Waddle being progressing, right? Devontae Parker made some crazy catches that game. He's another one of those wide receivers that's been hurt but has a lot of ability. You have Mike Gesicki, the tight end that can do a little bit of everything, So when you have all of these different guys that are out there, and then you have Myles Gaskins as a running back out of the backfield, if you can get these guys involved and they can come together as that team, right, that cohesive unit, then maybe they are a lot better than what their initial record suggested. So shout out to the Miami Dolphins for being 6-7. They still have a shot to make the playoffs, and it would be really cool if they actually made it. I would actually kind of enjoy seeing that. So hopefully the Miami Dolphins end up making the playoffs. But we'll see. We'll see if that's even a thing,
Yeah, it would make my brother happy. So you know what? I'm all for it.
Hey, shout out to that one. All right, so we talked about those 2 games. Let's jump from that to let's see. We talked a little bit about the Buccaneers. We'll quickly go over this one. Buccaneers and Falcons. Buccaneers won 30-17. I saw an Instagram post earlier today that had a fan with a Matt Ryan jersey, and on the back they used tape, and it said "I'm," and then they put "trying," so they put the T instead of his name. So it's like "I'm trying." Matt Ryan, man, I think he's coming to the end of his career, similar to Ben Roethlisberger. They said that's going to be probably his last season with the Steelers. But I'm glad that he's still out there trying, because they definitely need that. I think Atlanta needs some energy. It's kind of like when Vic came there and they finally got that energy. They need some more energy. They need an energetic quarterback that comes in and can really light it up. And we talked about college football and how there's not a ton of really good quarterbacks in this year's class. But coming up pretty soon, there's going to be a lot of guys. So next year, the years after, there's going to be a lot of guys that are really good that are going to be in that draft. So I'm excited to see the future. But for the Buccaneers, man, one player that I want to highlight, and I've never really understood how this player was so good, but how is Gronk so good? Like how does he do the things that he does? How is he always scoring touchdowns? How is he always getting open? How is he always running through people? He seems so uncoordinated all over the place. Like, what is it about Gronk that stands out? He may be, I'm not gonna say the best tight end ever, but maybe some people will say that that's the case, right? Maybe they'll say that Gronk is the best tight end ever. So what do you think about Gronk? How is he getting it done, and why is he such an impressive player? Or do you think he's an impressive player?
Well, Matt Ryan is trying. CJ McCollum is trying. I love the people that are trying. I love that. So what do I think about Gronk? The thing about Gronk is a large human being. Like, Gronk is basically an offensive lineman who has a pretty good 40 time. And you see Gronk is shifty enough to get open. He's fast enough straight line speed to beat people, especially linebackers that are trying to cover him. Safety gets on him, and he's going to just knock the safety over. And Gronk has this ability to not get tackled. And Gronk had a lot of injuries earlier in his career because the way people were trying to tackle him, they did everything they could. They were pulling all on him. They were trying to kick his legs out underneath him. He just would get hurt because people tried to tackle him because he just could not be tackled. I don't know if we've seen a combination of a person to be that big and also just fast enough to be a problem in terms of getting open and getting past people. So he's a unique combination. Like, I don't know if people understand how big Gronk is. You know what I mean? What is he, like 6'7"?
Yeah, I think 6'7", 6'6", 6'7", something like that.
Yeah, he's just way bigger, I feel like, than people understand. And he's really hard to take down. And of course, a target that big is hard to miss. And he's got a good catch radius. So he's just a really good sized athlete that can do just enough as far as like being athletic to really get himself open. And then, he does what he needs to do, and he's hard to stop. So is he one of the best tight ends ever? I would say yes, he has to be, according to the numbers, according to his production.
Yeah.
And those who've seen him play see his dominance, right? Like, you just can't stop him. When it matters, he's a go-to weapon. And don't think that Tampa Bay would have as much success without him, because they wouldn't. And he was expressly asked to be on the team because Brady was not trying to have a season without that dominant tight end Gronk. And if Gronk gets injured again, or he was out for a little bit and their offense did not look as good, and if he does get injured again, their offense won't look as good again. He's just that important. So, yeah, I mean, he's a specimen, and the likes of which I don't know if we've seen before, and maybe we won't see again.
Yeah, Gronk is one of the things that I appreciate about his game. He's deceptively fast. I feel like he's a long strider. You remember how when Terrell Pryor was a quarterback and he just had that speed that he just took off, and people were like, wow, he just has like this deceptive speed. Like, you don't realize how fast he's actually going to be going. And you see this big guy that's just on the line of scrimmage, and he just goes, and then he looks like he's going slow, but he's going faster, and then he's able to separate from you to get to the ball. He's very aggressive when he goes to try to get catches, which is a plus, because there's a lot of guys that wait for the ball to come to him or them. He's like, no, I'm going to go ahead and grab this, right? So he has really good timing. He also plays with an emotion or like a mindset of, he knows that he's better, or not like he knows he's better, but he's like, yeah, like I'm gonna beat you. He has like this playfulness where he's always trying to compete. He's one of the best competitors that I've ever seen in the sport of football. So I think that's one of the really good things about Gronk. His size, like you said, his speed, his hands, they're actually really good for a tight end. He's able to have I imagine he has a fairly wide wingspan, because some of the catches that he makes, some of the grabs that he makes are just like way outside of the realm of where I thought he might have been able to catch it. So I think that for him, those streak passing plays where he's just going right down the field, or when he's like cutting, like he just has like a very big target that Brady just knows how to get to. So as far as Gronk, I think that he's an amazing tight end. And I never really appreciated what he actually did in the NFL, but now I'll say, like, maybe it's just because of all the nonsense, right? Like all the ridiculousness. But I feel like I really am a fan of Gronk now. I like what he does, and I think that the Bucs, like you said, are very lucky to have him as a part of their team. If he can stay healthy, you never know. You never know what might happen with the Buccaneers again this year. What about Antonio Brown? This dude is up to his old ways with the ridiculousness again. Like, when is he gonna grow up? Is he ever gonna grow up, or is this just what we get from Antonio Brown? Is this who he is, or is he ever just gonna grow up?
Why would he need to grow up? Has he ever had anything keep him from playing football?
Yeah,
anything
he has.
Done, any sort of actions he's done.
Yeah, he has.
Really, it's maybe temporarily, but he's only actually improved his situation. Every time he's gotten in trouble, he's gotten in a better situation. He won it out from the Steelers. I forgot what he did to get off the Steelers, but they were like, we're done with you. He ends up getting a huge deal from the Raiders. They cut him. He ends up going to Tampa, or he was in New England for a little bit. Then he ends up in, he was better in New England because it was a better situation. Then New England, they got rid of him for some reason. He ends up in Tampa on an even better team than New England. Like, he just keeps failing up, and there's no real consequences for his actions. And he also, I don't feel like, is a person that actually will accept the blame for anything, like no accountability. Just like everything that happens is like, whatever, I don't care.
Yeah.
He just keeps on going. And for whatever reason, it doesn't catch up to him, or it hasn't so far. So he keeps doing what he does. And it doesn't hurt that he's one of the most physically gifted athletes that we've seen in recent times in the NFL. Like, every time I see him, he's wide open. He's quick. He's fast. He can catch like crazy. Like, he's got great hands. You know, he's the fastest wide receiver to some 900 catches. I don't know, maybe not that. Some number of catches he was the fastest wide receiver to. And then you think, how many games has he missed in the past X amount of times? Like, the number of catches that he got just playing with the Steelers was just crazy. He was leading the league in catches like every year, getting force-fed the ball, but he never disappointed. It just doesn't, if there's no consequence to what you do and you're as good as what he is, then he keeps getting passes, and that's just what he does. And he's going to continue to do crazy stuff like this until somebody holds him accountable. But when you have him on your team, there's a certain expectation that he's going to do something that will not look good for the team. Now, the question is, what is Tampa going to do? Are they so obsessed with winning that they're going to keep him regardless of what he does?
Yeah.
Right? And like, he's got court cases going on in the background. He's got the vaccine thing. And they're just like, well, we'll suspend him for 3 games. That's it? 3 games? Like, they're just going to do what they can to keep him on the field, to keep winning. And so people can say what they want about integrity and all that stuff. This is a move that shows no integrity, because as messed up as the guy is and as bad as the stuff he continues to do is, they're not going to get rid of him as long as he's healthy, right? If he had torn his ACL or something, they'd get rid of him. But it's just an ankle injury. So he can rehab that ankle injury during those 3 games. Have you noticed that this is the trend of Tampa, going on a tangent? Tampa, for some reason, has everybody injured at the beginning of the year. Then all of a sudden, hey, it all comes together. We got all our guys back right at the playoffs. Like, that's what happened last year, right?
Yeah.
It's probably going to happen again. Conveniently, guys get hurt sometime during week 12, 13. Oh, we're out 5 weeks. We don't get to play. Like, they're resting. And then, boom, hit the playoffs running. So I think that's going to happen. He's going to get suspended 3 games. He's going to come back healthy. They're going to look poised to make another deep playoff run with a seed that lets people have no expectations from them, and then they'll just get a favorable path like last time.
Yeah, that's so wild, man. Tampa Bay is doing really well, and they're definitely going to be a force when the playoffs come. Hopefully, Antonio Brown can get his stuff together. If not, I guess he'll still have a job and he'll fall up. So, congrats to him and his winning ways, I guess. The next game that we can quickly talk about, this Chargers-Bengals game. Did you get a chance to see any of that game, by the way?
Yeah, this was the game that I actually watched. So, I'd be like getting dizzy switching back and forth in games and all that stuff. So I just park on one game and look at it. Normally it's a CBS game because I like the CBS feed. It just looks good. Like, if a team I want to watch is on Fox, but there's another game on CBS, I'm probably going to watch CBS anyway. It looks so good. I just can't help it. So I watched this game. I really thought Cincinnati was going to play better, because the Chargers have not been playing really well as of late. But just starting at the very beginning, they were making some, just crazy catches. The wide receivers were for LA. They were moving the ball down the field. It wasn't an easy game, but LA controlled most of the game. They pretty much dominated it until the very end when Cincinnati made a push. But the Chargers were the better team this game. So I didn't expect that at all. And Cincy is a really hard team to understand. And if they make the playoffs, who knows what to expect from them? I guess the same goes for the Chargers too. Like, neither one of those teams is very predictable.
Yeah. I feel like that's, again, I think the big thing about the NFL this season is consistency. And I think the team that starts to have the most consistency is going to be the one that actually wins the Super Bowl, because all of these teams have shown that they can play at a very high level, but they can't do it consistently. And for the Chargers, right, the Chargers are one of those teams that sometimes they just blow out teams. Like, they put up so many points sometimes. It's like they put up 41 points today. And I think that when Herbert is on, when he is really like in tune to his wide receivers, when he has time to pass, he can make majority of the passes. Like, when I see him with a lot of time, I'm like, okay, this is a touchdown. Like, I can see the confidence. Like that long pass that he threw to was it Guyton? I think it was
like they jump off.
Yeah, I was like, all right, cool. He threw it with such confidence, and it was basically exactly where it needed to be. And I was like, wow, like right when he threw it, I was like, touchdown. I already know this is going to be a touchdown, because it's just how he is as a quarterback, And I really do like that part about him. So if the Chargers can have their line hold up, if they can get their defense to be a little bit more consistent, then I think that they have a real good shot again of really pushing forward this season. But it all just depends on that consistency and if they can actually keep it up. On the other end, the Bengals, right? They only put up 22 points. So how do you think the Bengals looked? How was Joe Burrow in that game since you got to see the whole game?
I felt like Joe Burrow just was getting pressured a lot, and I thought that he didn't have a whole lot of time. So, he was making some decent passes, but I saw a lot of him scrambling in the pocket, trying to get away from pressure.
Yeah.
Things that we thought last year were problems and, maybe helped contribute to his injury. But I think, maybe he still needs time. He still needs more time in the pocket in order to make passes because their running game really didn't kick off until the end of the game. Like Mixon didn't do a whole lot from what I saw until the very end. So maybe they need to make sure they establish the run a little bit better. Maybe it was just a little bit more difficult today, but you can't just have Joe Burrow constantly throwing, even though they have really good targets. And Burrow made some great throws to these guys and they made great catches, but you got to sit on the run a little bit more, make sure you establish that. That way, when he does throw, he's not just getting flushed out the pocket or pressured every single time.
Good point. Yeah, I definitely need to check out that game a little bit more on the Bengals part. I saw a lot of the Chargers part, maybe because they were the ones that were always scoring. But Joe Burrow, hopefully he can get it together. I think that he's a really good young quarterback. It almost seems like he's been in the league 10 years now for some reason, even though it's only 2 years. It's his second year. It just seems like I'm ready for him to take that next step. And he's playing like a veteran, but he's playing like a veteran that's regressing, I guess, in a sense, right? So that's why it's kind of weird or awkward. And I think that he needs to continue to elevate his game. Have we seen the top of Joe Burrow? Was that when he was at LSU? Was that at certain moments? I think that he has a lot more to offer, but he definitely needs to grow as a quarterback. Another game that just happened was the Cardinals and the Bears. So the Cardinals, they came out and they dominated early. The Bears tried to come back a little bit. So the game ended up being 33-22. I think we both picked the Cardinals as well. So what did you think about that game? The Cardinals, let's see, DeAndre Hopkins came back this game, right? Yeah. So they had DeAndre Hopkins. They had Murray as well. But he only attempted 15 passes for 123 yards, 123 yards, 2 touchdowns. Their wide receivers, none of them had more than 32 yards. That was DeAndre Hopkins. AJ Green had 14. Eno Benjamin had 12. Zach Ertz had 10. Rondale Moore had 1. Like, this is some crazy stat lines. Their best wide receiver was James Conner with 36 yards and 1 touchdown. James Conner is actually, I don't know, he's almost kind of like a secret weapon for the Arizona Cardinals. Everywhere James Conner went, he's actually been doing really well. So he had 20 carries for 75 yards today. He was making some crazy catches. I don't know if did you get to see his touchdown catch, by the way?
The one down the sideline?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that one.
Yeah. Crazy. James Conner has had a history and he's been known for a while, ever since he was back at Pitt, right?
Pitt, yeah.
Yeah. And he had his health issues that he dealt with and overcame, came back to dominate, and then went to the Steelers when their running back went out. He dominated there. Now he's with the Cardinals. He's dominating again. So Arizona has like a good, bad problem, right? They still have him. They have Chase Edmonds that should be coming back pretty soon as well. Arizona is going to be one of those tough teams to play if they are healthy, right? If Colt McCoy has to come back in, I don't know. But as long as they are healthy, I mean, the quarterback threw 15 times and they won 33-22. That says a lot about a team right there. So what do you think about the Cardinals and what they're doing and coming back and winning that game, especially with everybody being healthy again?
Well, you pointed out kind of the balance of the Cardinals. They like to play up tempo. And when you do that and you kind of keep the defense off balance, then you're going to be able to run the ball effectively like that. And you have, Kyler Murray is just an extra weapon out of the backfield if you need to run. Maybe not a design run, but when he scrambles, he can be really effective. Quick first step, just a fast guy. And when you have running backs who can just run like that, like James Conner, you're right. It seems like he hasn't lost a step or anything. You're like, why did Pitt exactly? Why did Pittsburgh want to get rid of him? Why did he leave? I don't know the situation. I was surprised that he's on Arizona, but being on that system, any running back can really be effective, just because they don't know when the run's coming, and they don't know when the pass is. So keeping the defense off balance like that really does make all their players more effective. And I think it doesn't matter necessarily if Colt McCoy's there if he can run the offense. Like maybe if Kyler Murray were to get hurt, we just have another Nick Foles situation, So hey, I think that Arizona is that good that they can sustain any sort of injury that's not season long and still have, a chance to compete. So I'm really surprised. Like I said, they were my team that was the best team in the first half when we did our little midseason awards.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't pick against them until I saw them lose. But, I'd like to see them play Tampa, maybe in the second round. I don't want to see them play in the championship game because I would not enjoy the championship game in that case. But I'd like to see them play Tampa and see how they would match up.
Yeah, I think that's going to be interesting, especially when they start playing against those teams in the playoffs. How well do they do, especially with that injury thing? And today they had 4 interceptions. When you're talking about the Arizona team, we talked about their defense and how they're out there making plays, right? You had Buda Baker with the interception, 77-yard return. Byron Murphy Jr., another guy that, again, very good athletic guy that can force turnovers. So they had 4 interceptions today for 122 yards. That's almost as much as Kyler Murray passed for. Isn't that crazy? Like their defense is really stepping up. And I think that one of the things that Jeremy pointed out is as long as you have a good defense and you have a solid offense, you can go wherever you want to. And I think that their defense is a really solid one when they're consistent and when they're hitting. So shout out to Andy Dalton in those 4 picks.
Yeah, you're playing on short fields. Or if your defense is scoring, you don't have to do that much on offense. So we've seen that before. When teams are just defensive dominated like that, like they're just so good on defense, their quarterbacks don't have to be good.
Yeah.
But when you throw in a quarterback as dynamic as Kyler Murray, that just makes it even tougher to play this team.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. So shout out to them with what they're doing so far. I think that they have a really good team, and I'm not surprised with what they've done so far this season. I'm excited for this playoffs. Like I said, this is the greatest, the biggest season ever. So it's turning out to be that, and I'm happy that we're able to actually watch this take place. The next game that I wanted to quickly chat about, I think this is our last game of the opening games, is the Eagles versus the Jets. So the Eagles, they're still getting it done, man. The Eagles are 6-7 right now. They won 33-18 over the Jets. The Jets had that win last week. So the Eagles, their quarterback was out this week. He was hurt, but they still did good. So maybe Jalen Hurts is just one of those guys that is the Carson Wentz. Maybe Minshew is the Nick Foles in that situation. So what happens with these Eagles, man? Why are the Eagles so good right now? What is it? Is it the defense? I think it might be the defense, but is it the defense?
You know what? I'm gonna have to defer to you because I haven't been able to see the Eagles play that much. So I don't know. I know that their rushing attack was really good, and part of that, of course, being having Jalen Hurts. But they do play a lot of close games. So yeah, you attribute that to the defense. But I don't know because you're not a fan of Jalen Hurts whatsoever. I'm pretty sure you're happy that Gardner Minshew II was playing today. So you tell me why the Eagles are doing so well, because I want to know.
Honestly, like I said, I don't think Jalen Hurts is the best quarterback, but he is probably one of the better game managers. He's able to get people the ball. He's not going to make crazy plays out of the backfield, but he can make them on the scramble, which is really good. Adding their wide receivers, again, they're coming together. Miles Sanders is back. He had 24 carries for 120 yards. Gainwell or whatever had 12 carries for 54 yards and 1 touchdown. So altogether, their team throughout is playing really well. I think that they just, even Devontae Smith, he only got 2 receptions today on 4 targets for 15 yards, and they still dominated. I think the big thing is their defense. I was talking to an Eagles fan, I think it was 2 weeks ago, and he actually wasn't excited about the defensive coordinator. He's like, yeah, he needs to go. It's his first year. He's our biggest issue. But I feel like their defense is actually a lot more solid than they get credit for. So I don't know. I need to pay attention to the Eagles a little bit more. and kind of get a whole understanding of why they've been able to put up some of the stuff that they have. Maybe I'll get NFL Game Pass and rewatch some of their games just to really diagnose how they've been doing, what they've been doing so far. So the Eagles are 6-7. The Dolphins are 6-7.
Let's see what their what's their plus minus. See what their plus minus is. Maybe that'll help really quick.
Their plus minus. The Eagles are plus 46.
There you go. I mean, at least they're able to score more than they give up. So that does lend to some defense. You know what I mean? I love that your Vikings, your beloved Vikings, have a +3 plus minus. So
it makes 100% of the sense. 100% sense right there. It's ridiculous. It's crazy because
points away from being 500. So there you go.
You know who's above them? Washington, with a plus minus of -53. That speaks volumes.
Yeah. Washington gets blown out when they lose, but they win close.
It's crazy. Speaking of that, though, when you're talking about the Eagles, right? The Eagles plus minus differential is kind of crazy. They're the top 4 team in the NFL or in the NFC with their plus minus. So that's pretty good, So it shows that they're holding teams to lower points and they're winning tough games. So shout out to the Eagles. They added to that plus minus today with that win over the Jets for sure. So that definitely helped out.
It is the Jets. So I think, going into the game with Gardner Minshew and it's against the Jets, I'm sure the Eagles coaches felt pretty confident about being able to win that game. Another interesting thing I'll say is I don't like to talk about fantasy so much because, I believe wholeheartedly in the fact that nobody cares about your fantasy football team, right? You can spend an hour talking and people are like, we don't care, dude, right? So one thing I'll say that I think is important is when you have a fantasy football team and you look at things like plus minus and you can see how it doesn't matter whatsoever sometimes. Like sometimes your team is just terrible in the beginning and then you start really building momentum toward the end, but it's too late, and this is how it feels maybe for the Eagles because Eagles are playing well, but they dug themselves such a hole that even with such a good plus minus, even with good differential there, maybe it's too late, and they got to get lucky down the stretch to, be able to advance and to get into the playoffs. But right now, maybe that's not what they can do, but it's just sometimes you dig yourself in too big of a hole. And you see that when you have a fantasy football team and you're just wishing for somebody to lose to let you in, to the playoffs. And, you see that in the real game too.
Yeah. So right now the Eagles actually are holding the last playoff spot. So they're number 7 right now. And when you're talking about them getting in, I think they have a good shot. If you look at the teams that are below them, Washington, inconsistent. The Vikings, who knows? They're going to lose probably the next games and just be the Vikings. Carolina, Atlanta, New Orleans, the Giants, the Bears, the Seahawks, and the Detroit Lions. So those teams don't really have that much of a strong schedule or a strong record or a lot of momentum going on. There's only one team below them, the Vikings, that actually has a positive differential. Speaking of differentials, man, if you look at Arizona and Atlanta's like point differential, it's basically 235 point different. Like that is huge. Like that shouldn't happen. We're only in week 13. Like Arizona is putting up way too many points and Atlanta is giving up way too many. Atlanta has a lot of issues. We talked a little bit about them earlier, but they need help. They just need help throughout. So I'm sorry for the Falcons fans. I know I tried to give them some support. I don't know how they're 5-7 with a negative 116 point differential. That is mind boggling right there.
Last point on the Eagles really quick. Their schedule, they're off next week. They get Washington twice at home versus the Giants and versus the Cowboys in the final week of the season. So 3 winnable games in a row, and then the Cowboys.
4 winnable games.
6-7 now. Again, they could be 9-7 going into the last week. They might already have a playoff spot locked up at that point. So the schedules treated them kindly. So they have a lot of room to make some noise here based on their remaining schedule. So that's something to look into. I think the Eagles are peaking. Dare I say peaking at the right time? We'll see.
Yeah, they're doing really good. I do want to give out one shout out for the Jets though. I think Elijah Moore is doing a fantastic job this year. a young wide receiver that's out there. He's had 5 touchdowns in the past 5 games. I think what is this 2, 3, 4, like 500 yards receiving. So he's doing a really good job for that Eagles team. They definitely need, or sorry, for the Jets team. They definitely need more playmakers that are out there. 21-year-old, short, small wide receiver, but he's getting it done. So hopefully that helps out with the Jets. We talked about them before needing a couple more weapons for Zach Wilson to try to get to. Zach Wilson actually didn't do horrible, but it wasn't that great of a performance.
Interception.
Yeah, he threw one. At least he's not Andy Dalton in those 4 interceptions. Like, Andy Dalton, you too old to grow up. You and Antonio Brown go hang out and both grow up. So I think
I don't know the difference between Andy Dalton and Kirk Cousins. I really don't know the difference. I mean, paycheck is a huge difference, but really, what is the difference between those 2 quarterbacks?
Red hair.
That's it. Yeah, because I can't really feel like Kirk Cousins is going to take me any farther than Andy Dalton took the Bengals. You know, at least you knew what you were going to get. I feel like maybe Kirk Cousins has a higher ceiling but a lower floor. Maybe that's the problem.
Yeah, that's probably it. So that range is like their medium is right about the same. But and Kirk Cousins has some crazy weapons. You know, Justin Jefferson what do he have? Almost 200 yards receiving today.
Yeah.
Just wild, man. Like that dude is just amazing. The Vikings, they are just, I'm looking at this last play again, like, what were they thinking? Oh my gosh, this is,
I haven't even seen it. I'll go back. I need to look at it.
Just click on ESPN real quick. Just click on there and look at their game cast. It should be the first video that's up there. It's so ridiculous, so mind blowing.
All right. Well, while I do that, let's keep going. What we got next?
Yeah, we're gonna keep going. That's the game. That's the game plan. Oh man. Why are you looking at that? Just pointing out another thing. When we're talking about that plus minus, right? You can tell when, you know how Jeremy always talks about a good bad team or a bad good team. I think the point differential can kind of help us out with that part, right? Like, this is how you can talk about the Colts as like a good, the best, the worst best team, right? How do I know that? Because their plus differential is 88 points, but where are they at? They're like 9th in record wise, right? So that really shows a lot about the Colts, right? It shows that they can win games, they can really dominate a lot of teams, but they lose close games that they shouldn't for no obvious apparent reason. So the Colts are one of those teams that is maybe like the best or the worst best team. And then when you look at the Chargers, right? The Chargers have a negative 1 point differential. So it shows that they're not consistent, right? Like, they can win a lot of games, but they get blown out, right? So there's a big difference between those two teams. And hey, the Chargers have a better record. So shout out to the Chargers and the Colts. There's a disappointment, I guess, in a sense. So disappointing Colts.
Did we get offensive pass interference on that Lions play? The Lions receiver just barreled into the corner before the ball
on the last play.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure that should have been offensive pass interference
on the last play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
to the touchdown.
Yeah, it wasn't the guy who caught the ball. It was just a different wide receiver that just like barreled into a defender.
Oh well, I mean, you can't impede the wide receiver's route right there. So
no, but he barreled into him. Like, they'll call that as offensive pass interference before. I mean, especially if it's on a pick, they'll definitely call it. If they're not looking at that side of the field, then maybe they don't. But I feel like under the letter of the law, that could have been called, and then that would have taken away the touchdown, and the game would have been over. But
the thing is that guy, the defender for the Vikings, actually moved in front of that guy. He actually positioned himself and moved over into his route, so he impeded his route.
Defense.
No, you can't make contact with the wide receiver. After...
I know. He didn't make contact. He didn't initiate.
He did. Look at the play. Go back and look at it. Go back and look at it.
I'm looking at it now. The wide receiver lunges at him. So because he lunged at him, he couldn't really get out of the way. Like, I've seen it. And
he moved in front of him. Like, he literally moved over to get in front of his route, and that's why he ran into him. It wasn't that he just ran straight into a guy that was just standing still. It's a difference.
We need more people watching the stream so we can get a consensus as to what people think about that play.
Just look at it. He moved over. He shuffled his feet.
We need
Did he move over?
takes on it.
I'll ask you that question. I'll make it simple. Did the defender move over into the path that the wide receiver was going?
The defender, yes, he moved because that's what defenders do, but he didn't initiate contact.
But you can't. Yeah, but if you're a defender, if you're moving and you're moving in a direction that somebody's running a route, then you're impeding their route. Right,
so you're telling me that as a defender, you don't move in the direction of the receiver?
You do, route? But you don't move into a direction that's gonna block their route off, right? Like, because then that's what pass interference is. If you're impeding the wide receivers,
pass interference is when you initiate contact. It's not getting in his way. If you get to where he goes first and he knocks you down, that's not your fault. That's you anticipating. But
if you're moving, it is. If you're standing still, it's not. If you're moving, it is, right? Like if you're standing still and somebody runs straight into you.
Call though, like the guy this isn't a block charge call. The receiver pushed the guy. If you look at it, he pushes into him the same way that you've seen this happen before. I remember Notre Dame did this at the end of a game one time, I feel like, and they called offensive on it where the guy just like barrels into, or maybe it should have been called and they didn't. Either way, I've seen it before where guys will barrel into the defender to create the pick. And then they call it offensive pass interference because they create a pick rather than it looking more natural and being that the rub action, as they call it, right?
So what would you have liked the wide receiver to do? I guess I'm confused.
Run his route without running into the guy.
How could he run his route if somebody's in front of him?
It was done to take out the defender.
How can he run a route when he's running like this? The defender scoots over. Like, there's going to be a collision, right? Like, there's no. What is he?
Run a route. His goal was to initiate contact to eliminate the defender from.
But he ran a route. He made a cut. The defender moved over.
He didn't cut. He
did. Straight. Go back and look.
I watched it. He didn't.
Look at it now. So
are we looking at a different? Are we looking at a different one? He didn't make a cut.
Okay, so I'm going to screen share this. I'm going to screen share this so everybody can see it. So, because Jeremy keeps saying this, and I can't have this on the podcast because we know what pass interference is.
Let's go on the podcast because I'm not editing. I'm just putting it all up.
Yeah,
But the video part is a Facebook Live exclusive. So
let's look at this. So let me show you guys what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Right here, we have the receiver. Now he makes a cut. Do you see how he's changing his angle, right? He starts to change his angle. Let me annotate for you so that you can see what I'm saying. The receiver started out running a route like this, and then he cuts. He cuts this way. What does the defender do? He goes and he impedes the route.
The defender plays defense.
The defense is not impeding routes. That is what's called.
Yes, because what you're describing as impeding routes is inaccurate.
No, look. So I'm going to press play. So let's check it out. He goes over to him. The defender catches him.
When the defender is backpedaling with a guy pushing into him, he is not interfering with the offensive player.
He is. Look at his feet. Look where he starts out at.
Look
where he starts out at. Look where the defender starts. Look where the defender starts at, and then look where he stops. So he goes, then he moves over into the route that the guy's doing.
You're supposed to move to where the guy is.
You cannot hit the guy that's actually running the route.
Hit him. He was hit.
If you're moving, what are you doing? He already has the receiver already has. Listen, moving does not mean the receiver already has the ability to run whatever route he's doing. Yes. As a defender, you have to be able to let him run his route and make a play on the ball. If you are contacting a wide receiver after 10 yards, then that is a penalty. Or after 5 yards, then that's a penalty.
My entire point is not that is the receiver contacted him.
How?
It doesn't matter if you
if he moves,
that's the problem. He initiates the contact.
So if there's a car that's standing by itself and you're driving and they decide to move over a little bit and impede your route, then it's like, oh, well, that guy just came over and
that in no way is a parallel.
An accident.
That in no way is a parallel.
It is
that
because
is not a parallel because that situation would not happen. Now, what you want to do is play it from here. Look at the different angle. No, go from the second angle, not from this angle. From the second angle.
Cool.
And it's way easier to see.
All right, we'll watch this. I know what you're saying. Like, I see what you're saying, but look, he cuts. You see how he cut?
It doesn't matter if he cuts or not. He barrels into the defender.
He doesn't barrel into him.
If he was trying, most wide receivers, if they're trying to get open, are not running into the defender because that's in no way getting you open. He ran into the defender to take him out of the play.
He didn't know the defender was going to be there, right? He's running his route. If you're going 100 miles per hour.
You don't know if he knew the guy was going to be there or not, but you can tell for sure he puts his weight into the defender.
Let's look.
That's why the guy's backpedaling like that. He's absorbing contact. rather than trying to actually move out of the way. Because in any given route, a wide receiver is not going to run into the defender unless he wants to take him out of the play.
Okay, Jeremy. Well, he was trying to get to the inside. The defender came in the inside and cut it off. Like the defender cut off his inside route and boxed him in. Like what is he supposed to do? Like it makes no sense. Like he's going inside. The wide receiver comes inside. He absorbs him. He absorbs the wide receiver when he's coming towards him.
All right. Anybody listening to the podcast, go back and look at this final play of this Vikings-Lions game. Send us a comment. Leave us a comment on Facebook, comment on Podbean, whatever you're listening to this podcast on. Tell us what you think about that last play. We'll see. I want to hear from all of you listeners what you think about it, because I expect there to be at least 6 listeners.
That's just ridiculous. I'll say that's ridiculous. 6. That's ridiculous, man. That play was ridiculous, man. That was not offensive pass interference.
To the podcast, go on to our Facebook page, Beyond Sports with Paul and Jeremy on Facebook, and then you can actually see where Paul's annotating the video. You can see the video. Hopefully we won't get in trouble, but we'll see.
Get in trouble?
Yeah, if it gets taken out from Facebook or something, I don't know. So go and look and then see and then tell us. Either way, whatever way you want to get up with us, let us know what you think about that play, because obviously we can't agree on it. I mean, it is what it is. The game is over. The Lions won, but I just feel like that could have been called for offensive pass interference. So on to the next part.
Tripping. That's what I'll say. He's straight up tripping, man. Tripping. All right. Next game. So let's talk about some of the current games as well, Jeremy. Let's see. What do we have? We have the Rams versus the Jags. So that game's actually a little bit closer than I anticipated so far. The Rams are up 16-7 against the Jaguars. They currently have the ball on the Jaguars 35. What do you think about those two teams, and who did you pick for that game? Did you pick the Rams?
Yeah, I picked the Rams for that game. I've been hearing talk that Matthew Stafford is hurt in some way. Maybe he has a back injury or something like that. Something that you would never be able to necessarily see, but that is present and that reduces his effectiveness, because Stafford has been playing terribly the last 5 weeks maybe. And you could see that he was one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL throughout the first, 5-6 weeks of the season. And then at some point he took a nosedive, and you've seen his play be bad. You've seen the Rams lose 3 or 4 in a row. I think 3 in a row. And it's just been really bad. And luckily they also themselves have a palate cleanser today playing against Jacksonville. And this is all they can muster right now, 16-7 lead. So something's going on. This is not the expected result when they got Matthew Stafford on the team. But, there's a lot more going on than just Matthew Stafford. Their defense hasn't been playing exactly what they thought it was going to be. But again, if there's something going on with Stafford, then the offense won't work the way it's supposed to, especially with him throwing copious amounts. So, I expected them to be better, but considering how Stafford's been playing, I'm not surprised right now.
Yeah. I think Matt Stafford's out there doing a lot better. I think that OBJ being out there helping him out is an addition to them, especially just having another target. When Robert Woods went down with the injury, it definitely kind of threw off their rhythm, threw off their game. The Jags, are the Jags. They do what Jags do. They kind of show up in games, and they kind of show little in games as well, So overall, I think that Matthew Stafford, with that injury, he's out here throwing some really good passes. I just looked, they're on target. And I think he just threw a touchdown to Cooper Kupp. Okay, cool.
Yeah, 29 yards, I believe.
Nice. And the pass before that was really nice and on point as well. That's one thing about Matthew Stafford. He does throw a really nice pass, and he can get it to a lot of guys if he has the time to throw. I think once he starts getting pressure, that's when he starts having a lot more issues. There's not a lot of quarterbacks that really do well under pressure in the NFL. There's some that can make plays, but a lot of these guys, they don't really do too well under pressure. So if they can keep this up, if they can get that consistency, especially with these wide receivers that they have now, they definitely have a chance to get back to where they were earlier in the season. Let's see.
I think so. I worry about their consistency, and I think it all starts with Stafford. Again, if you're asking him to throw 40 times a game and he's not completely healthy, then you're basically putting your team at risk 40 different times, And like you said, when he gets pressured, he's made some questionable decisions, throwing off balance, falling down, just trying to get rid of the ball instead of just taking a sack, would be smart to do.
Yeah.
Things that a veteran quarterback shouldn't be doing at this point in his career, like Andy Dalton, like you just said. So, I think the quarterback issue in LA hasn't been solved as far as the Rams. And we're just going to need more time to see if Stafford is healthy. And if he is, maybe he's the answer. But otherwise, they took a big swing and they missed.
Yeah, it's really hard. I feel like the game is interesting now. Like there's a lot of guys that let me restart that. So the NFL really has made it so that quarterbacks are highlighted on every single team. They've really made it more quarterback friendly. And honestly, it's kind of weird because some of these quarterbacks that we anticipate or think that are going to do a lot better, they're not as good as what we think that they should be. You know, when you talk about Carson Wentz, when you talk about Matt Stafford, we're seeing Patrick Mahomes have his issues. Like there's guys that are getting open, and I wonder what's happening with quarterbacks right now where they're just not getting the balls to people. They're not having that much accuracy, even without the pressure. Sometimes it's really kind of perplexing in that type of situation. I think that there's something going on in the NFL where, I don't know what's going on with these quarterbacks, man. Tyler Heineke with this pass that just got almost picked off by the Raiders. So it's going to be interesting to see how the quarterback position goes in the future. Jeremy was talking about before, he thought that the MVP should have went to Derrick Henry, right? Because he produced so much. This year, I gave my MVP to Jonathan Taylor because what he's done for that team. But, you know, even with all that he's done in the previous game, he barely got any rushing yards. They tried to make the quarterback the key person. George Kittle with a touchdown. Shout out to him. That was a nice little run from George Kittle. Who was that? Garoppolo. Your favorite quarterback, Garoppolo, just threw a touchdown pass. How does that make you feel?
That's my Super Bowl team. That's my quarterback.
That's your QB. Yeah, they're 6-5 also. Man, all these teams are right in the middle right now.
I don't know what in the world is going on. They're making a push. So now I got to root for them. I was out, and they pulled me back in. I got to root for them.
Ooh, talk about walking a tightrope. That. Let me see. Did he go out of bounds at all? That was close.
Was it San Francisco again?
Yeah. Ooh. Hey, that was amazing. That was an amazing run right there. Run after catch.
Unfiltered Paul commentary. Ooh.
To what?
Ooh. Very descriptive. So now you know exactly what just happened there.
Hey, it is what it is. You need that energy. So speaking of that game, right? It's 23-14 right now, about to go into halftime. It's actually fairly high scoring for what it is. Have you got to see any of that game, by the way, Jeremy?
No. All I got the Baltimore game here, so that's all I'm seeing.
So that game so far, it's kind of interesting when we're talking about these quarterbacks, right? Russell Wilson is back. He's 10 for 12, so accuracy is really good. He only has 71 yards though, so that's going to be one of those issues. He needs to make sure that he spreads it out. And when you're talking about a team that has these wide receivers like Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, right? These are those big home run threats. So far, their longest pass has been 33 yards to DK Metcalf. So they need to get involved. I'm not sure how it's going. I know he really took a break, I guess, with that injury. Ooh, sorry, got distracted with the pass. But he took a break with that injury. Now he's trying to get back into it. But I think that what do you think about Seattle? I know that they're not going to make the playoffs this year. They're only 3-8. But what can they try to build off of for the rest of this season? It doesn't look like they're going to win this game, but what do you think they can build off of for the rest of the season?
I just think they need to have a big farewell party for Russell Wilson. They need to do just like you know, when athletes retire and everybody does jersey swaps and, you know, they celebrate him at the opposing stadiums and all that, because he's probably gone. This whole thing looks like it's just going down. Like Pete Carroll, oldest coach in the NFL. He used to be so vibrant. He might, you know, have lost a little bit of his fire. The team doesn't seem like it's exactly what it was. So I think they can set themselves up to transition just for next season. So whoever they want to keep, you know, probably Lockett and Metcalf can stay. Even Lockett's been up there long enough to where I wouldn't be surprised if he left. But probably transition is going to happen in Seattle. So I think they should just start evaluating players they want to keep, evaluate who maybe from the coaching staff they could promote if they want, and just plan on the future without Russell Wilson. And everybody just, you know, part amicably and just be happy on the way out.
Yeah, it's interesting. Russell Wilson I think he's a very good quarterback. I think that they have a lot of issues right now because their team is not constructed well, right? When we're talking about teams being constructed, Tyler Lockett and Metcalf, again, are those deep threats, right? They're not necessarily, I mean, Lockett can get open and get separation on some of those shorter routes, but he's not necessarily a reliable set of hands, so they don't have that in Seattle. I think that they need another wide receiving playmaker or another wide receiver that can have those consistent hands. If they're able to get that, if they're able to get another guy that Russell Wilson can take advantage of, even the tight end type of position, right? They have Everett or something like that. So even the tight end position, they need a little bit more from their team. So if they don't get that, it's going to be a little bit harder for the Seahawks to really advance and for Russell Wilson to put together some of those long drives and continuous drives. So I think that's one of the biggest issues with the Seahawks, but we'll see what happens. I think if they can have Russell Wilson buy into this new offense and they can get a lot better, then they should be good. Man, Russell Wilson looks like a small guy. Maybe he is getting older, man. He doesn't look as fast as what he was before.
Yeah, and you know how it goes with Russell Wilson. He has such a good deep ball that I think he likes to throw it. I think that the offensive coordinator doesn't mind that he throws that deep ball, but I think sometimes they can get too reliant on it. Like you said, Metcalf is good with the deep ball. Lockett has made some great plays on the deep ball. They've had other guys come and go that are just really good at catching the deep ball, but I think you're right that they need to get to more of a shorter passing game when they pass the ball, rely on the run like they used to. But I don't think that it's anything they need to sustain, because I don't think it's going to be the same next year. So they can change it a little bit, but I think next year is where they're going to have to overhaul things. So they might as well just have fun this year and try to end on a winning note, and then just see what happens going into next year.
Yeah, and one thing about the Seahawks. Oh, they're trying to go in and score right now. They're at the 15-yard line, I believe, with 26 seconds left to go. One thing with the Seahawks, if you think about how their team was constructed before, they had a very, very dominant defense for years, and I think that allowed Russell Wilson to take more chances down the field. He was able to take these shots, even if it got intercepted, right? Like, he knew that the defense could be able to bail him out, right? So he had a little bit more confidence. Now, without that defense there and him having to make all the plays and really drive it forward continuously, now his playing style has to change a little bit. And I think that kind of takes a little bit of time to get used to. So Russell Wilson back right now, passing to the end zone, and he overthrew DK Metcalf for the touchdown. Easy pass at the back of the end zone. So again, when we're talking about these quarterbacks and that consistency with their passing and that accuracy, right? He had the pocket all to himself, but he missed that pass. So there's an issue that's going on where these quarterbacks aren't as accurate as what they were. I'm not sure why that is. Again, overthrew this wide receiver. Something's going on with Russell Wilson. I don't know if he's completely healthy or what's going on, but yeah, he's not having it right now. So shout out to Taysom Hill. We didn't talk about that game either. What did you think about that New Orleans game and Taysom Hill being the starting quarterback? I know that they didn't win, but what do you think about that game, by the way?
Yeah, I didn't think it worked. I just didn't think it worked. I think if Taysom Hill has to be the starting quarterback, they're not going to win a lot of games because there's just not enough time to get him used to it until you have an off season. I just feel like right now he's not able to stay in the pocket and throw. I mean, if the throw is there, he could make it, but I don't see him being that pocket passer. He's quick to run, and he did really well in terms of rush yards, but that wasn't what really the team needed. So I think for now, they're not going to do too well until maybe they get more of an offseason, because he's just got to get more comfortable being the starting quarterback and playing all the time as opposed to playing in relief duty. So if they're going to stick with Jameis Winston, then that'll be fine. Have Taysom Hill be the change of pace guy. But if Taysom Hill is going to be the starter, it's going to take a while to get him comfortable enough to be in the pocket and stay there and not run all the time. Yeah,
that also makes me wonder now, since Taysom Hill has been elevated to starting quarterback, now does his contract thing start to hit where if he's the starting quarterback, he gets like 4 years, $95 million or something like that, or it escalates up? I wonder if it's already started, I wonder how that works specifically. But he did have more passing yards than Dak Prescott. They both had 40 passing attempts. He had 30 more yards than him, but he also had 3 more interceptions than Dak Prescott. More touchdowns, but way more interceptions. So 4 interceptions, man, that is a lot for a quarterback. He also had 100 yards rushing. That is a crazy stat line. 250 yards passing, 100 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. beats me, man. Beats me. Not sure what's going on in New Orleans. I'm not sure what they do, but if Taysom Hill can get his interceptions under in control, they probably would have won that game. Again, I'm not impressed with the Cowboys. They're 8-4, but it's a very tricky 8-4. I don't think that they're a solid 8-4 team. I think that their record is just 8-4. So
yeah, I'm not sure either. I don't think they're too great, but we'll just have to see because they've got a couple of division games, I think, and we'll see how that shakes out. I think they can still win their division. They can still get a good seed going into the playoffs, but I wouldn't put a whole lot of faith in them winning in the playoffs. So how about we go through, because I'm kind of running short on time here. How about we go through, do our rest of our couple of picks that are left, and then wrap this whole thing up.
Just one quick question before we do that. Do you think that Tony Pollard is better running back than Ezekiel Elliott?
Right now, yes.
Awesome. Thank you for that one. All right. So the next game that we have, who is that, Jeremy? Talked about 49ers. We'll say Ravens Steelers. So Washington and the Raiders. What do you think about that game, by the way?
Oh, I mean, I thought that Washington should win the game, not for any reason. Just the Raiders are hard to predict. Raiders, again, a lot of emotion involved, and I figured that Washington could win. So I picked them for that game, and we'll just have to see how that goes.
Yeah, I picked the Raiders. I think the Raiders can still win this game. They're down 1 point in the third with 4 minutes or 5 minutes left to go. Raiders, yeah, they're going through a rough season. Washington is right in the playoff picture right now, so they definitely need this win to keep it going. We talked about how they have the Eagles coming up, so that's going to be one of those close matchups right there. The Jags, Rams, we talked about that game. And then the last, we have two more, the Ravens, Steelers. So who'd you pick for the Ravens, Steelers, and what is your takeaway? They said that this might be Ben's last year with the Steelers, by the way.
Yeah, it should be his last year with the Steelers. He's played a long time. He's had a lot of injuries, but, he's still playing well enough. It's time. I think it's time. So I picked Baltimore to win. I think Baltimore is just a better team. I mean, they've somehow managed to be the number 1 seed, so they know how to win, and whatever they do is working. I think Baltimore is better, but you never can tell with either of these teams, strong rivalry games, so they both want to win a bunch, and you just never know what's going to happen. But I'm going to go with Baltimore.
Yeah, I went with Baltimore also. Ravens are one of those really tricky teams. Like every time I see the Ravens, I'm always kind of like, it looks like they can lose every single game that they're in. Like they don't have any super convincing victories. And like I said, I think that's one of the things that's going to be something to watch when the playoffs come around. Even though they're the top seed, like they're a very shaky top seed. So I think that anybody can win the Super Bowl this year. So again, the greatest season ever. I'm excited to see what happens. Hopefully Ben does a really good job for the rest of the season. He's a very dynamic quarterback. He does things that, again, we haven't really seen from a lot of different guys before. So he's had an amazing career. Don't know if he retires or not if he doesn't stay around, but they still have a shot to get into the playoffs as well. So shout out to Big Ben. Make it happen. You have that magic. As I speak, he almost does the interception. Next game and the final game. Oh, actually 2 games, right? So Broncos Chiefs is going to be Sunday night game. So who are you taking for the Broncos versus the Chiefs?
I'm going to go with the Chiefs, but the Broncos managed to win games that you don't think they're going to win. So if the Broncos win, I would be like, makes sense. But I'm going to go with the Chiefs. The Chiefs seem to be hitting a little bit of a stride. I still think it's artificial, but I'm going to go with them anyway.
Yeah. I decided to go with the Chiefs for this one too. Not overly confident in that pick, but I think with those two teams, you never really know what you're going to get. I hope that the Chiefs can put together a little bit of a better game this time around than last, or than what they've been showing recently. But the Broncos have been really tough. These teams are in the same division, and they're only 1 game apart. So this game actually has a bunch of implications later on in the season. So it should be a good one. I'll definitely try to tune in for that one. The last game that we have is going to be our Monday night game. Another one where these teams are only 1 game. Excuse me, are only separated by 1 game. 8-4 Patriots going against the 7-4 Bills. A lot of storylines here. We have one team that's on the rise, one team that's kind of on that fall. So who are you picking for this game, Jeremy? What are your thoughts for this final game?
I'm going with New England, the class of the AFC East, apparently. So New England, like you said, they've been on the rise. They've been playing really well. Their defense has really locked in. They've been avoiding mistakes for the most part on offense, running the ball, going back to their old school formula. I think that's good enough to win. And if they can get a lot of pressure on Josh Allen, if they can make him question where he's throwing the ball, Belichick is really good about making it hard for quarterbacks. So if they can do all that, I think they can win the game. It might be a close game, but I think they can limit Buffalo's prolific offense, and I think they can score enough to win with their running game.
Yeah, I think the Bills at home, this is the type of game that they're ready for. Like, this is the one that they've been waiting for. They've been waiting to play one of those really good teams again, where they can really show what they're made out of. I think that this is going to motivate them because they now feel like they're underdogs, right? And I think that when they play from an underdog mindset, they play a lot better. So for me, I actually chose the Bills for this game. So we'll see what happens. That's another one to watch. I don't know. Actually, I might get a chance to watch that. They got a Friendsgiving event, something like that on next Monday. But yeah, so I think that that's a really good game. We have two really good games coming up with the Broncos at the Chiefs and the Patriots versus the Bills. So far, Jeremy, I think that we've done pretty good this week with our picks. Only a couple that I didn't make so far. I had the Vikings over the Lions, the Giants over the Dolphins, and all the rest of the games are looking pretty good. Oh, yeah, and I picked the Saints over the Cowboys. Too bad Taysom Hill had any. That's the other thing. Taysom Hill didn't have any of his support, right? Kamara wasn't there. He didn't have his wide receivers. So for what he did, hey, it worked. So
last week I went 8-7. You went 6-9. So I think for the year so far right now, I'm 104-75. You are 98-81. So 6-game difference between us right now.
Man, I gotta pull up my weight pretty soon. So I'm gonna start making some real picks. Finally, I want to start making real picks.
Keep it real now.
Keep it real. Keep it real.
Really quick, the bowl season and all that stuff just happened. So do you have any thoughts on the CFP? And
Jeremy just cut out last second. You said, do I have any thoughts on what?
Oh, you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Do you have any thoughts on the college football playoff and the bowl games?
Oh, I will say a couple of things real quick. That game against Alabama, Georgia, it'd be good to see if they get a chance to play again. That'd be pretty interesting. I like what Michigan did. They looked very dominating in that game against Iowa. Iowa is not necessarily that good of a team, but Michigan really showed out, especially after that tough win last week against Ohio State. So I think that that's a really good thing. I'm glad Notre Dame didn't get in there. Oklahoma State disappointed me. They played one of the worst games ever. I had no idea. Oklahoma State is like the Vikings team. Like I had no idea. Did you get to see the Oklahoma State game at all, by the way?
I just saw the last play of it.
Oklahoma State, I'll end it with this. They got pressure up the middle every single time. They have one of the most dynamic running quarterbacks in college. They didn't put him on the move. They didn't have many design quarterback runs. And they just paid for it. They just kept having him in the pocket with continuous amounts of pressure. I don't know what's up with coaches and not being able to make adjustments. They're too overly confident in what they put together as a game plan. And I think highlighting that, this is one reason why I appreciate what Bill Belichick does. He understands that you need to make adjustments. He makes really solid adjustments. And there's some people that need to learn from him because some of these games are just annoying to watch when you see teams do the same thing repeatedly and it's not successful. So I'm excited for the college football playoffs. Who do you have winning college football playoffs, by the way, Jeremy?
Well, I'll start by saying really quick, that Alabama-Georgia game, completely unexpected. But when Alabama scored 17, I was like, wow, that's about the most that Georgia's given up all year. And then they kept scoring. And Bryce, what's his name? Bryce Young. Bryce Young.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, dynamic. Running, He was passing, live arm. Really, really impressive watching him play. And then, to see Georgia, who had been so dominant on defense, just get run on like that off of the deep plays.
Yeah.
From the Alabama wide receivers who were just so good. It was really impressive of a victory from Alabama. I think that we'll see Alabama and Georgia rematch because, I'm glad Cincinnati got in because, they've been one of the best teams all year, undefeated. Yeah. They get to play Alabama in the first round or the semifinals, whatever you want to call it. I imagine that Alabama will win that one. And then I imagine that Georgia will beat Michigan. So it'll be Alabama and Georgia again. And I guess I'd have to go with Alabama only because it seems like they got it figured out. Now Alabama lost John Mechie, who was, one of their two top wide receivers. So they'll have to find a different way to carve up the defense. But I can't imagine that it would go any differently. We've seen these things happen where, you get a repeat, and in college, it goes the same way. You know what I mean? In college, like, there's not really that much of a difference. So it'll be kind of the same thing. You have any thoughts on that?
Give me Michigan, man. I'm a hardball fan, stemming from the Colts, but they haven't really had that success level that they really have thought they were going to have, right? They made their first Big Ten championship, won that Big Ten championship. I think that they keep the ride going. Their running back, that little short dude, man, he is fast. He is fast, but the quarterback's even faster. The quarterback hawked down the running back on a play to come and block for him. I was like, wait, so this running back went up the middle, bounced it out to the side. The quarterback ran around the side, ran around his running back, blocked the guy so that he could get in the end zone. When you have determination like that, your team can go really far. So I think that grit that they're playing with is one of those things. And even though Jeremy has affiliations with Michigan, he is not vibing with them. He is not vibing with them.
I appreciate what they've done. I was watching. I celebrated that victory over Ohio State, but I just don't think Michigan – I think Michigan is just like your Baylor or your Oklahoma State, like you said, like teams that just for some reason don't seem ready for prime time. And, Michigan overcame a huge hurdle by actually beating Ohio State. Like, I lived in Michigan from 2014 to 2020. Never saw them beat Ohio State. So they finally won, and so I'm happy that they did. So, yeah, I mean, hey, I got out of there and it worked. But the problem is that I just don't feel like they're as physical. They are a physical team, but I feel like that SEC physicality is different. I think to see what Alabama did to Georgia just shows how good Alabama's game plan was and how good their athletes are.
Yeah.
I just don't know if the Big Ten athletes can compete. I just don't know.
We're gonna see. That Michigan defense is pretty strong as well, but we saw Alabama dominate a very strong defense, so we know that they have the capabilities of doing that still. Yeah, Jeremy. Outside of that, any last thoughts before you get out of here? I know you have to run pretty soon. Any thoughts on today's show? Anything that you want to put in there before we head out of here?
Oh, speaking of bowl season, UNC is in the Duke's Mayo Bowl apparently. So in Charlotte, we can't get out of Charlotte. Seems like every single bowl game we go to is either Nashville or Charlotte. Yeah, so kind of unfortunate for a team that was top 10 preseason to end up in the Duke's Mayo Bowl and not even get to leave its own state. We're playing South Carolina, so it's a regional game basically. Like, yeah, not exactly the most fitting into a season. Probably last time we'll see Sam Howell at UNC. So, it's, just the things. I just wanted to comment on that. I'll take South Carolina in the game also.
Purdue is actually playing in the Music City Bowl against Tennessee. Nice. Man, give me Purdue. Boil it up. I think that we can take this one. Aiden O'Connell, if he comes back this year or comes back next year, I'm even more excited. But that game's going to be December 30th, I believe.
Oh, ours is on December 30th too.
Yeah, so maybe we'll do a
watch party.
We'll do a live show watch party. I'm disappointed that the game is in Nashville with Tennessee, but hey, it's a kind of big name school. I was hoping they played San Diego State out here so I could actually go and see it, but I'm not going to Tennessee. Maybe I'll go to Tennessee. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, let me know. I might have to go up there.
Nah, let me see how much tickets are. But yeah, outside of that, yeah, bowl season's here. Maybe we should do some bowl season picks just for the fun of it at some point.
All next week.
Cheapest one is $68. All right, cool. Next week. All right, cool. Yeah. We'll try to do that. Outside of that, this is Beyond Sports with Paul and Jeremy. I'm Paul.
I'm Jeremy.
And thank you guys again for listening. Check out that play, man. It's just like if it was in basketball, would you call it a charge or would you call it a foul? I'd call it a foul. I wouldn't call it a charge. Same thing with football. I don't know what Jeremy's talking about. Check out that play. Let us know what you think. We're probably never going to agree on it, but that's cool. Like it's fine that we don't agree on every single point. It makes the show a little bit funner, or a little bit more fun. So thank you guys for checking us out, and make sure that you check out that Thanksgiving special. It's a really good show. Lots of laughs and cool animations in that one. So with that said, hope you guys had a happy Thanksgiving and enjoy the beginning of December. Hopefully you guys get some snow or something like that. I don't know. But with that, peace. Take care.
See ya.
Bye.